University of Illinois at Chicago's MSA, as well as the Council of Islamic Organizations of Greater Chicago, to close out Black History Month with an organic conversation across 3 generations to discuss being Black and Muslim. Dr. Aminah McCloud Al-Deen is joining us here. She is a professor emerita of Islamic Studies in the Department of Religious Studies at DePaul University, where she founded the United States' first undergraduate baccalaureate program in Islamic World Studies. She's also the former editor-in-chief of the Journal of Islamic Law and Culture, a Senior Fulbright Scholar, host of Critical Talk, a Muslim Network TV production, and an executive board member of IMAN, a board member of Soundvision and MuslimArc, to name a few. We're also joined here by Sherelle Mohammed. She's a senior at Howard University, where she pursues a psychology major and a criminology minor, and is HU Law School bound. She's also a community outreach coordinator of Howard University's Muslim Student Association on the executive board, and she is the president of the Juvenile Justice Advocates for Howard University. And she's also a writer for Howard University's Muslim newspaper, Qalam. My name is Ndidi A. Okakpu. I'm a community advocate and I work in community development. I have a practice of management consulting for nonprofits and small businesses. I'm a trained organizer. I never know how to introduce myself. I'm a student of Quran and knowledge, a student of the late leader, Imam Warith Mohammed, and I work in development at International Muslim Action Network. So with that being said, that's the 3 of us. And we have a diversity of voices represented here. We have a baby boomer, myself a millennial, and Sherelle, who's a member of Generation Z. We also collectively represent 3 major movements in Black history and the foundational movements in Islam in America. Dr. Al-Deen, who comes from the Dar movement, myself from Imam Warith Muhammad's community, and Sherelle, the Nation of Islam. So we have so much, it's a really diverse group of voices. And I guess the way that we can kind of start this is I'll kind of kick this off to Dr. Al-Deen. Dr. Al-Deen, you are a former Black Panther and your origins in the community came through the Dar movement. Can you share a little bit about the origin of the Dar movement for those who don't know, or at least a little bit about its impact on Black history and Islam in America, for those who don't know?
Let me just give a quickie and then I can, then I can respond to questions. The Dar movement is, can you hear me?
Yes, ma'am.
Oh, okay. Is actually an offshoot of Sheikh Dawood Faisal's movement in New York in the late 1920s. I belong to the group in Philadelphia, Pennsylvania. What else did you ask me? I'm having a junior moment here.
Junior moment. Okay, I like that. Mm-hmm. So I asked about what do you its impact, the impact of the Dar movement on Black history and Islam in America. I know that there was recently, I think Sapelo had an article about the Dar movement and some recent photographs that was documenting its history. There were some pictures of Shirley Chisholm visiting with the Dar movement. So I wanted to know a little bit about the Dar movement's impact on Black history and Islam in America, for those who don't know.
I don't know. Let me see, impacts on Black history. I would say that where the Dar was, many of the people who came to the Dar came out of the Black Panthers. So they brought with them knowledge of community health centers, food programs for children, after school programs for kids. And then added to that Islamic Studies. The Dar was more so not a cult of personality group because the imams changed every 3 years, I think it was. And because we decided that that was important. We also decided things like the whole community got to vote and to hear on the imam's mastery of knowledge, you know, Quran and Hadith and sources of the law, etc. So in some ways, we called ourselves building a what? A real Islamic community in America. Um, and but the impact on the communities around were those social issues, you know, arts and culture for children, um, the feed kids, which the government snatched from the Black Panthers and made it another whole program. Um, but clinics inside of that it took, you know, that idea, very, very small, but they manifested it that way. In terms of Islam in America, many of us, you know myself, you know Sherman Jackson, you know Aminah McCloud, you know Ihsan Bagby, although Ihsan came out of the Islamic Party that was in Washington, D.C., but affiliated with the DAR. So many of us, you know, because there probably was minus that personality center, people don't announce it. You know, they're just there. There you go.
There you go. There you go. And so my understanding is the DAR movement was like, it started in like 62. So around what time did you kind of come in? And
I don't think that it started in 62 because it was an offshoot. I think people really became aware of it around 62.
Okay.
Let me see, when did I get to Philadelphia? I got to Philadelphia in 1970. And there she was. But I had become Muslim when I was in college. Um, for me, the transition to Islam was not difficult because I didn't come from a Christian background or any of those things. So it was not, but my Islam was taught at Lincoln University because we were a union for African students and also a haven for African refugees. So I learned about Islam there. I mean, truly learned about it. I had met members of the nation who lived in my St. Louis neighborhood who were buddies of mine. But learning about, you know, sitting down to actually be old enough to learn about Islam, it was at college, and the Islam I learned about was wonderful. I mean, I don't think I saw the women in the nation were very distinctive dress, which I thought was just the bomb. You know, it was the best thing I had seen. But I did many of the African women I met wore gele. So I also transitioned to a gele very early. And I don't think I saw Black women wearing veils until lots of immigrant women came here. And I thought that was peculiar.
And smiles at the end with the period. That's your punctuation.
That was my period. That was my period.
Punctuation mark. Go on there. Yeah. So no, I think that's. I appreciate hearing that experience. So you became Muslim in college, and it was not a very hard introduction. It wasn't a very hard integration.
Because the Africans don't surveil in the way that other immigrants do. You know, when did you become Muslim? You know, why are you Muslim? Were your parents Muslim? How long you been? Do you know how to make prayer? And all? Africans don't tend to do that. They just kind of like having you around. And many during that time, some of them The Nigerians were in the Biafran War. People talked a lot about politics. And even though I wasn't a social science major, they talked about humanities. I mean, subjects in humanities, about water shortages, this, that, and the other, which I found just fascinating. And at Lincoln, we also had Stokely Carmichael. We had a bunch of people who, Kwame Nkrumah had been there, and a lot of people, he sent a lot of, no, he didn't send, but a lot of students knowing that he had been there came there. So we had a wide swath from the continent there, and there were these lively conversations. And I would say about 80% of the men, mine was the first class of girls to live on campus. So about 80% of the men were Muslim.
Mm. Wow, that's very rich. I feel like you touched on a few things. You talked about the Biafra War. My dad is Nigerian, and he was a child soldier in the Biafran War.
Yeah.
I hear so many connections there. Sherelle, like this is just a free flowing conversation, so feel free to jump in. I'm wondering, like, did any of that resonate with you in terms of what she was sharing about her experience on campus? I think, you going to a HBCU, Howard University, I don't know, maybe we can think about that. I do want you to maybe get an opportunity to kind of share about the Nation of Islam and its impact on Black history, but whatever you want to speak on, sis, go for it.
Yes, so the Nation of Islam was founded in 1930 by Master Farad Muhammad in Black Bottom, Detroit. His mission was to uplift the Black people of Islam. There he met Elijah Poole, who became the best student. Elijah Poole became the Honorable Elijah Muhammad after Master Farad Muhammad left. And after that, the nation grew with temples all over the country. It has a strong history at Howard University. Malcolm X debated Bayard Rustin in 1961. And in 1967, Muhammad Ali spoke there days before he refused to get inducted into the army. So Muslims continue even after that to attend the university, and they could be seen in yearbooks with the suit and tie and the headpieces. Famous Muslims have come from the Nation of Islam, such as Malcolm X, Imam Warith Muhammad, Betty Shabazz, Mother Clara Muhammad, the Honorable Minister Louis Farrakhan, and even my mom's sister Ava Muhammad, who's watching now. The legacy of the Nation of Islam is serving Black people with Islam to change their lives and to reform the communities by learning to do for self. So that's just a brief history on the Nation of Islam.
Can I add something to what Sherelle brought up? I know she knows this, but she left it out. For people who have watched Ma Rainey's Black Bottom, and what she was talking about what as the Black Bottom is an old expression that talks about the richest of the land. It's where the earth grows stuff very quickly and very abundantly.
Yes, ma'am.
Just putting it in.
Yes.
That sounds a little bit that's reminded me of how we referenced the concept that the last shall be first, the first shall be last, and the last shall be first, right? Some of that rich history and that deep soil. So yeah, I mean, no, thank you so much, Cheryl. I think one of the things that I reflect on is just our shared history. So I'm someone who came from Imam Muhammad's community, and we talk about, we have that shared ancestry, right, of the teachings of Master Farad that inspired the Honorable Elijah Muhammad, Sister Clara Muhammad, who actually heard the message first. And we talk about, we're a panel of all women. This conversation is not exclusive to women, but we are a panel of all women. And, it's been coming up in conversation. I heard a young man say, a young man say last week, he mentioned the fact that he was referencing something from Shahrazad Ali's book about when she was trying to teach women how to eat healthily and teach Black families to eat healthy, and that they threw out the meat, trying to get them to throw out meat and certain pork products. And he mentioned something about Clara Muhammad, and you know, he had it all twisted. So we had to kind of set him straight. Like, no, she actually is the person. She's the mother of the movement. In all actuality, she's the one who first heard the teachings of Master Farad, and then, you know, brought her husband in, who is then Elijah Poole, and became Honorable Elijah Muhammad. So, you know, we have a strong history of women leading, not necessarily, I mean, in various ways. But yeah, I just appreciate hearing that shared history. So I think where Imam Warith Muhammad's community comes in is that, in this kind of this historical narration, is that as Sherelle mentioned, you know, Honorable Elijah Muhammad was able to help uplift us in a time where Black people were denigrated and disrespected beyond belief. And, you know, in 75, when Honorable Elijah Muhammad passed, his son, Imam Warith Muhammad, transitioned a group within the nation to what we would refer to as the universal practice. And we have been, you know, a lot of as Dr. McCloud mentioned, Dr. Sherman Jackson, Dr. Aminah Wadood, Dr. Istan Bagby, and Sherelle mentioned Malcolm X and Muhammad Ali. We have also have continued a long tradition of being our authentic selves as Muslims, and also being our authentic selves as African Americans, and contributing to our communities and societies. And so, you know, in our ranks, you would count people like Congressman Keith Ellison, Andre Carson, and many other people who continue to both be proud in their Islamic heritage and also proud in their African American ancestry, and contributing to the betterment of our communities at large. So that's just a quick little synopsis. But in this conversation, us representing 3 different groups, I guess I want to kind of kick it off to Sherelle. As the Generation Z in our midst, is there anything, I know you do a lot of work in social justice and social advocacy, and I'm wondering, like, how is your experience being a Muslim student on the HBCU, and if there are any things that, you know, I can start there, but like, what is your experience?
So yes, so being a Muslim student at an HBCU, I would have to say I feel very supported because I have a strong family, and being at an HBCU and being in the MSA is amazing because basically everybody looks like you, and it's a very inclusive experience. Like, we don't deal with the negatives, only the positives, and being a Black Muslim at Howard University is celebrated. And I would have to say some of the issues, well, I didn't really know about these issues till recently. I was honored to cross paths with Dr. Bahia Muhammad, and she's one of the strongest social justice leaders that I know. And she actually was awarded the best teacher, best professor award last year. So when I crossed paths with her, I started to learn about all the incarcerated youths. And basically, I wish like I was taught that in the past, because I never knew all the problems that we had with the youth. Like, I always knew about like older people getting locked up and having problems with that, like the school to prison pipelines. But when you actually get to engage and understand and realize what's going on with the youth, it opens your eyes up. So I would have to say that's one of the biggest issues that I learned about being at Howard in the MSA.
Interesting. Dr. McCloud, Dr. McCloud Al-Deen she's actually my former professor at DePaul University.
Wow.
She hates us good too. Like, I had a whole, joking. I was in the finance program there, and I studied harder for her class than I did my statistics class. Like, she was like, look, we got 17 books on the syllabus. If you can't read them, you're not going to make a decision, right? So yes, it's wonderful when you cross paths with wonderful professors and who really can inspire you and challenge you to go the mile, to go the distance. My experience with MSA was a little bit different. I know, Dr. Al-Deen, your experience has been, you were actually an advisor at DePaul.
Well, there was no MSA, and I purposefully decided to not call it the MSA because of the racism, and I called it UMA because I wanted to set a different tone, where there was some gender equity and there was some racial equity. I couldn't fight it all the time. It became an up and downhill battle. But when I was in college, there was not, and I went to an HBCU. I don't know that I knew that's what it was, but we didn't have any kind of Muslim students, anything. So not familiar, but I gotten familiar with the antics later, because rather than a kind of social atmosphere or with spiritual and religious stuff for all Muslims, it was ethnically divided, and all Muslims were not welcome. So that made me go for Ummah, to divorce it as much as I could from the MSA. But I am curious about something that Sherelle said. How in the 21st century or the late 20th century are young people not being taught about Black history? It seems as though me, and I refuse to tell you what century that was, but me, we learned Black history as a staple. You know, not having taught classes at Mohammed's University, but having inspired some classes there, I found those students exceptionally bright. Loved it when I could have one of them in my class, but I forgot to ask about Black or African American history. I'm just surprised that people have to wait till they get to college, and what happens to those who don't go to college, with regard to knowing who we are. I mean, I'm listening to these responses to Judah and the Black Messiah, which I find painful. If you don't like, but Black Lives Matter brought it back, because I watched how many young Muslims got the courage to go fight for social justice, but we will be the first to open their mouths and talk about how Islam stands for social justice. So does that mean it'll stand for social justice as long as I don't have to get up and do anything?
Oh,
Sherelle?
so
Lady.
I'm a transfer student. So most of the classes that you get as freshmen and sophomores, I didn't get a chance to get.
Okay.
So yes, so I learned most of my history classes growing up because I was raised in the Nation of Islam, and I went to all Muslim school. So
Oh, so you were a step ahead.
Yes, I was always.
Yeah.
But I think Dr. Al-Deen, you make some good points in terms of the fact that we have to be very accountable for teaching and educating our children as the Muslim community, as Black Muslims, as Black people. There stands to be, a lot of us come from oral traditions, right, of us passing down history from parent to child. And I think that the fact that there's not a lot of information readily available about the impact that Black Muslims have made to Black history or Islam in America is definitely like a failing on American society, but also the documentation part also kind of falls on us, and to for our scholars like yourselves, like people like Dr. Deborah Majid, to document these things, get it in books, get it online, make it accessible. Historians like, I think, Zahir Ali and paper like journals like Muslim Journal and Sapelo Square are, kind of doing the heavy lifting, but we also, people like a Sherelle, who is in school, like, advocating that, on student campuses, some of their, we're joined here on the Zoom with many students who are from UIC, UIUC, and as well as maybe some Howard students. And so just kind of advocating to make sure that this history is included, because it's part of American history, it's part of Black history, it's part of history of Islam, So I think that's really important.
Well, I know one thing is that you can't expect someone else to tell your history, one. And if they do venture to try to do it, more likely than not, they'll do it inaccurately. Two, but all of us can't do the heavy lifting. We don't have researchers. So if any of you out there would like to become researchers, let me know. Don't have time to then post stuff, and there needs to be a kind of little chain of command. And I think one of the things that can be learned here is the fact that although we may have come from different communities, there's a lot of fluidity across communities in African American Muslim community. I don't have any problem with going to Warith Dean's, one of the communities that follow Warith Dean. I don't have any problem going to the Nation. I think that I watch people move. One person I'll see when I'm researching the Moorish Science Temple, I'll see them a month later in a Warith Dean community of seminar, and the third month I'll see them, as something over at the Nation. I think where our differences lie is what we have to say about the place where we live, and whether or not we're bold enough to say it, or whether we want to walk fine lines as if that's going to make a difference to the people who try their best to keep a foot on our neck. Unfortunately, much of me has been shaped by the Panther Party, so I am not quiet. But I watch, and there are differences in just ideology and people's approaches on one side, but then there's also, because of so much surveillance coming from the children of immigrants, they're the only Muslims on the planet. They couldn't straighten out homeland, but here they're going to straighten out anybody who seeks or attempts to be Muslim, which I find peculiar. And there is a kind of underground pushback. You should be learning Black history all of the time. Because as Clyde Al-Amin said last night in another forum, had it not been for the sacrifices of the parents of these two young ladies, many immigrants wouldn't be here. And it's not saying that you should devote your life to learning all of the details, but to be ignorant of your origins here is just being ignorant.
Yeah, it's one of those things where it's not, we have to be accountable, and it's no longer acceptable to feign ignorance or to claim ignorance, meaning there's a responsibility for us to educate ourselves. And I think that it's good that we're having a forum like this, because this is an opportunity for people to kind of educate themselves. One thing that I know that I noticed was the conversation, or I've heard about, is a conversation about being Muslim enough as a Black person, or feeling like, I think you made a reference about the questions about, like, when did you become Muslim, or like all these type of.
Do you know how to pray? Do you know how to make a wudu? My grandson got asked that question. He's a third generation Muslim. And he said, Granny, I almost punk slapped him. I said, please, no slapping.
No, please don't. But yeah, I think So I grew up in the Claire Muhammad school system, and the community that I came from is one that we had large Black Muslims in the military. We have a large veteran program, Muslim American Veterans Association. I think, we came up in a time where people were saying like, oh, Muslims can't participate in the political system. And it's like, but we live in a land, so we have to be able to vote and we have to be part of the political process, which is why we have so many people like who are politicians and people who are active in civic engagement. And I grew up with sisters like Sister Aminah Muhammad out of Houston, who is a beautiful Qari of Quran, like a beautiful reciter of Quran. And that was never anything that was foreign to us, like having women who could recite Quran. But then, in certain spaces, it's like, oh, you can't recite Quran. And so it's just really interesting having those experiences. And then where we are now everybody is like, get civically engaged, and everybody is like, become a politician and join, get all involved. And then you have Muslim sisters reciting Quran. But at the time, people were like very, very highly critical of Imam Muhammad's community in terms of, for all the things that everyone is highly is like pushing the needle on now. So I think that it's a good lesson in temperance, in terms of, I won't say minding the business that pays you, but like before we like start casting judgments and being critical, we're regarding ourselves, and we're making sure, that our aqidah, our own practice and everything, our own, how we do our own wudu, and if our khimar or hijab or whatever is together, before we start like kind of proselytizing other folks and teaching each other different things. So I think because the same thing that you critique someone from may be the exact same thing that you're asking them. I'll never forget how after I was working in Imam Muhammad's, he did a lot of interfaith work, was the first Muslim to give the invocation on the floor of the Senate, and a lot of interfaith work when people were like not really doing interfaith work. And so, when September 11th happened, people were like calling us, like, you guys have relationships with, interfaith relationships, what can you set up these vigils, and can you set up these, set up some things for us and connect us with people, and then folks kind of took, like, we made these connections, and then kind of folks was kind of so when you're saying like people need to educate themselves about these origin stories and the foundational aspects of Islam in America, I think it's 100% correct. Sherelle, what do you think? What are your thoughts?
I would have to agree. I feel like it's really our job though to teach the next generation, because if we don't teach them, then there's just going to be another generation where, everything goes downhill. So I feel like it's the Generation Z's responsibility to, pass the wisdom. So however we're taught, that's how we're going to teach them. So Dr. Al-Deen was right when she says that, when you pass history down, sometimes it can be inaccurate and things like that. But I feel like it's up to us to just get the major parts, like the key points across. And as long as they know the key points, then, they can decide on their own. But yeah, it's definitely our responsibility to pass down the wisdom.
Wonderful. I think I agree. And I was going to ask Dr. Al-Deen if there's anything specific that you want to share or impart to the generations that are coming after you. Or Sherelle, if there's any questions that you have for, I'm somebody.
I have one major question. What comes after Z?
Alpha.
After Z.
Alpha. Oh, and well, in terms
of Generation Z, where are you going after Z?
Alpha. That's the generation that's coming up. They call it Alpha, according to the social sciences.
Oh my goodness. Okay. Well, I think it's a great time to invite people in the audience to ask. I think that intra-Muslim dialogues need to happen, and they need to happen quickly. And honestly, I have heard from the immigrant community horrible things about the nation, and they pass that along to their children. And much of what they've heard is not true. Everywhere a faith tradition goes, it sits inside of the culture, and all of those cultural obstacles and good things that are already there. I mean, because I used to teach, I mean, the wherever I go in the Muslim world, there's no pure manifestation of Islam. It looks like the culture where it came to sit. And to talk about a post-colonial Islam as the only Islam really makes my blood boil. But nevertheless, young people get what their parents and what Islamic school, I refuse to call it Sunday school because I don't approve of the Christianizing of Islam, but nevertheless, a conversation is needed. And this is one place where the conversation can start.
Okay, well, that being said, I would like to go ahead and bring up Sufyan, who is the board member of at University of Illinois, Urbana-Champaign.
Urbana-Champaign.
So Sufyan, go ahead and you'll kind of share some thoughts and bring us to Q&A, yeah?
Yeah, so I just wanted to say real quick that the reason why we wanted to do this is that we wanted to show appreciation for the contribution that Black Muslims have had in our Muslim communities within the past, present, and the role that they will continue to play in the future. And for that reason, we invited 3 different generations of Black Muslim women speakers to come talk to us about their own personal experiences. And I just think that was an amazing conversation that you guys were able to have. So thank you guys for having that. So we have one question from a viewer on YouTube. She asks, are there any Black Muslim think tanks out there, or do we need to start that movement now?
We have one, it's called Greenwood Policy Institute. It's began during COVID. The website should be up shortly. And please, if you are thinking about its perspective, but hoping that some of those perspectives help change or instigate policy.
Okay.
So we were joined by Brother Anthony Simpkins. Do you have a question?
Hey, baby. That's my boy. Don't ignore him.
Okay.
But let me ask you, Sufyan. Let me ask you about. Well, don't be putting your hand up there. Let me ask you about your phrasing of the question. Okay. Do you find yourself surveilling African, because there seems to be this thing about not being able to tell the difference between an African, and all African Americans aren't the same. You know, it's a lot of they're the children of a lot of misogyny. But when you find yourself asking somebody, how long have you been Muslim? I'm not saying that you do this, but if you do, or if you've heard people do, what is the set of presumptions there? Given that African-American Muslims on their 4th or 5th generation of Islam.
So, sorry, so what are the presumptions I make?
Behind that kind of question.
Sorry, I was looking at the chat real quick. Could you summarize that?
When you yourself or you hear someone else beginning to surveil an African-American Muslim, usually with the question, one or the other, how long have you been Muslim? When did you, I hate the word convert because that's a Christian term too, or do you know how to pray?
Right.
What are the set of presumptions that allow that question?
You know, that's a really interesting point, because I feel Black Muslims actually, they established Islam in this country. So I feel like making those presumptions to Black Muslims, that's not exactly fair, because I guess Black Muslims are more of a minority. And well, so in our MSA, I see Black Muslims as more of a minority, even though I feel like that they did a lot to establish Islam for what it is today in America. And
So why are they a minority?
I'm not sure
Is
exactly.
it because when they show up, you start speaking Urdu or Arabic?
Yeah, so I think when we had all these, when people started immigrating to America from India and Pakistan, they brought along with them their conservative Islamic values. And I guess they thought that it clashed with, the Nation of Islam values, and there was like a clash between cultures when we had a mass influx of immigrants into this country. And I guess they established that their way of Islam was quote unquote right, even though that's not really fair to say, right? Mm-hmm. So I think that's where those presumptions come from, especially from my culture, which isn't fair, because we didn't get here first. Black Muslims are the roots of Islam in America, and it goes all the way back to pre-Civil War times. And that history is rich, and we have to honor that history, because I don't think people look at it enough. We don't analyze where Islam has come from in this country enough.
I appreciate that honest reflection, Sufyan.
It was great.
Yeah, I think so too. I told you, Sufyan, you like this cat. He's a cool cat. Mm-hmm. So I think that it's interesting. I think those presumptions are made. I think there's this feeling of we had Islam longer. And so, either I'm from the land of the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam. So for me, I have to teach these people who are new to Islam, right? Even though there's multiple generations, right? Or, maybe, instead of like coming from like Saudi, you're coming from like, I don't know, like Islamabad or something like that. But we've had Islam longer, right? So we've this responsibility of imparting wisdoms without first finding out, whether or not somebody even, what their knowledge is or what their practice is. I think that it's really interesting. I heard a narration, or a story rather. I think it was Abdurrahman Murphy. It was that Abdurrahman Murphy. He was talking about Ibn Abbas, right? He was talking about Ibn Abbas and how Ibn Abbas was young. He's one of the companions of the Prophet, and he was young. And when he was brought around the other, and so when you guys, just so that you know, since we're streaming on YouTube, when you turn your video off, it takes you off of the screen on YouTube as well, just letting you know. So Ibn Abbas was around, he was young and he was brought around the companions. And some of the older companions of the Prophet, they were a little like, they didn't understand, like, Umar, why are you always bringing this young guy around? And so he said, you don't know why? He said, I'm gonna tell you why. And then he talked about Surah Asr. And this is one of the last chapters in the Quran that talks about time and the value of time. And that time is that time, that we're in the loss of time. That time is coming, that by the token of time, mankind is in a state of loss except for those who patiently persevere. And so when he, no, it wasn't Asr, it was Nasr. I'm sorry, it was so Nasr, about the victory of God. So this chapter about the victory of God, Umar asked the companions, when you hear this chapter, when they say, when comes the victory, you know what I'm saying? And you see masses coming and crowds coming and gathering, what is it that you hear? When the victory of God has arrived, what is it that you hear from this chapter, this revelation? And the people say, oh, that the Muslims are going to win. That's the answer. That's what we're getting. The Muslims are going to win. And then he said, okay, Ibn Abbas, what do you get when you hear this? He said, I get that the prophet is going to die soon. And he said, well, what do you mean that the prophet is going to die soon? He said, because if the victory comes, then the prophet has completed his mission, right? And so everybody else is hearing immediate gratification, but they're not really hearing the other part. And so Ibn Abbas was young, right? And he often felt unwelcomed in the spaces. He was newer, he was young, but he had a voice and he had experience that was different to offer and to make a contribution. And so when I think about Black Muslims' contribution, I look at it in that narration, I hear it. We're not always, when we come into certain spaces, sometimes you get the questions about, your Islam or the this or that. And it's like, it might just be that those, like our prophet said in his last sermon, may the last of you understand it better than those of you who are with me right now. It may be such that the message, the understanding, the application of this deen, the fitra, this religion of origin, may be even better applied and understood in a way by those who are not just automatically thinking that they inherit the religion, right? But who've had to like strive and to cultivate it for themselves, and coming from generations of that.
Well, I think listening to all of you, that progress will be made. You'll have to fight through the stuff that has already been out there, and hopefully we'll get some of these writings out. I am so tired of Malcolm X being called, derogatory terms and this and that and the other, and Louis Farrakhan is this and that and the other, and the good that they do and who they really are for their communities and the communities around them gets lost. I had the fortune, I have had and have the fortune of knowing both Minister Farrakhan and Warith Mohammed. And what I see as a younger person, in going along with what Ndidi was saying, is missed in the story of Warith Mohammed. And it's missed because it's not situated in the story of Minister Louis Farrakhan and the Nation of Islam. The women, all of them, across the ethnic groups, I find some of the brightest young men and women that, I told Sufyan, I was so glad I was retired because they are all a pain, but they're a good pain, because they're growing and they have opportunities to bring together. Islam in America hasn't finished establishing itself yet. And more things like this, Sufyan is going to go back to the MSA and institute some more programs. He's going to decide, since you're in America and you speak English, that the meetings and gatherings will be held in English. That's one thing. Don't ever short shrift women. Fortunately, you're in America. Some woman somewhere is going to sue a masjid somewhere. Women are not used to getting it back. Let me put you in another building and all of this other craziness that comes from other cultures. They're still very much American, and they consider themselves Muslim and have to take the weight of being Muslim out in the public spaces. So whatever leads manliness is, I was getting ready to say something else. I'm trying to be nice because Ndidi will get upset. Is giving you, you'll learn how to temper that too. And I think that I pray that the MSA continues the talks. That the MSA would do this talk is really outstanding. If you look over there in the list of participants, you have you have Dr. Nisa Mohammed, who's an assistant dean of, Muslim life?
Yeah, religious life.
Right. You have Minister Ava Muhammad, who I haven't talked to in ages, but one of the first women ministers in the nation when Sunni
Yes, the first.
communities was saying, oh no, oh hell no, we'll all go to hell if a woman gets up there and teaches us anything. I guess you're pump slapping your moms with the backhand. You know, I mean, this thing against women and their knowledge and their ability to lead, you can't keep your foot on their necks long.
Yeah, and I think people like Sherelle, and Sophia, they give me a lot of hope. I mean, what is it? We got like a 10-year and some change age difference, just a little bit of change.
I'm gonna track her down. Have no fear.
They give me a lot of I won't say hope, but I'm like, hope. I don't know if hope is the word, but like I feel good about the fact that folks are there's I feel like Generation Z gets it. I know Sherelle, I know they just had the Savior's Day weekend this weekend and things. Are there any is there anything else that you kind of want to share?
Yeah, there's a young lady's picture I see here. Miss or Mrs. Bukhari?
Yeah.
No, Bukhari.
She may be one of the participants on the Zoom call.
Faiza? I can't even see with my glasses on. This is pitiful.
It's okay. Yeah, I see Fizza Bukhari. Yeah.
Fizza, okay.
Fizza Bukhari.
Are you there?
We're there. Yeah, Sufyan, are there any other questions from the audience or?
Yeah, we have another question from the audience. It was kind of going off of what you guys are talking about.
Sure, and I want to make sure Sherelle also makes sure if she has any other things to share.
Yeah.
Oh, no, I'm just going along with the conversation.
I think this is something all of you guys could answer. This person asks, considering the deeply rooted discrimination Black Muslims face within the Muslim community, what is some advice all of you can give to the young leaders of the Muslim community and the MSA and MSAs to help improve relationships with one another in a supportive and effective manner?
So I would have to say with us being Black Muslims in America, we understand the sting of oppression and the sting of racism. So we are less likely to engage in oppression and racism. So I would just say to just keep being brilliant and be young. Like, we're all young, so just lead the next generation the best that you can. I know we can't probably do the best, but I would have to say do the best that you can when it comes to wisdom and passing it down the generations and stuff. So that's about it. Oh, I didn't.
Yeah, I mean, I think I would just say, so I agree. I agree with what Sherelle said, and I would say just know that your Islam is not dependent upon anybody else's is not dependent upon anybody else's interpretation. Your just as your worth or your esteem is not dependent upon anybody else's what is it? I think it was Nelson Mandela. There's this quote that says, "Everybody believes it's impossible until someone does it," right? And if if Black folks didn't demand freedom, we would still be in chains. We would still be enslaved, right? So, when you know what to do and when you know what is right and who you are, and you have a sense of self, you focus on that and you move forward with it, irrespective. And follow the hikmah, the guidance of the Quran, because it will always keep you straight, And so it really gets to the point where it really doesn't matter what people's opinions are if you know in your heart what is correct.
I think that racism is such a nasty disease or condition that one of the things all of us have to remember are about the things that we want to take with us to the last day. And if nothing, the pandemic has shown that the last day for you on this earth can occur at any time. So you have to think about, what do you want to die with? Do you want to have in your heart a hatred of another people that you don't know? Um, and that goes for African American Muslims too, who are building an animosity because they didn't expect to find such a deep racism inside the Muslim community, and not they didn't realize all of the forces that were in place in history to put it in other cultures. So that's what I would say, is think about what you want to take with you.
Did Fizza, is she on mute, or were there any
She
questions?
said she didn't have a question, but if one of you wanted to talk to her about something, she.
No, I was just going to ask her what she thought about the conversation.
Yeah, sure. I can ask to. Let's see.
There are a few students here in the Zoom, so I bid you to not be shy. If there's any particular questions, and we won't bite. I know Dr. Al-Deen, she put her professor hat on. She's taken her professor hat off. Just to, so if there are any comments, I don't want you guys to be shy.
Lizza.
Hi, assalamu alaikum.
How do you pronounce your first name?
It's pronounced Fizza.
Okay.
Yeah. So I thought the talk was really good. I personally don't know much about Black history, especially Muslims and Black history. So that's why I joined this meeting. And I thought it was very beneficial. I definitely learned a lot. There were a lot of names that I wasn't, that I didn't know about before. So I had to Google a couple of things, but yeah, it was really interesting.
So would you benefit from Sufyan taking back to the MSA? Because it's not only that you don't know about African American Muslims don't know much about anybody else either. So that we can have a kind of cultural colloquium.
Right, yeah. Yeah, I agree.
So this sounds like a good building spot for moving forward. And like, which school do you go to, Fizza?
Oh, I go to U of I in Champaign.
Yeah. I think this sounds like a good launching pad for, some more connectivity and connections. And I think that sharing off of what Sherelle, like what I was discussing with her earlier in terms of, the advocacy kind of really starts at, like she said, the parents and, we are responsible for teaching, for passing the information on from generation to generation. That's why I did love the context of this multi-generational conversation.
Mm-hmm.
And then, within each of our generations, we should be able to speak and advocate for the future. So that means, like I said, Dr. McCloud and her colleagues, Dr. Jackson and her other compatriots, so to speak, that they're advocating by way of research and documentation. Of my generation, we're currently on the ground, what I'm saying, working in community development and community organizing. And I think like Sherelle, who's still a student, getting ready to graduate, getting ready to head to Howard Law School, inshallah, Lord willing, this is a space where someone like yourself, someone like Sufyan, someone like Fizza can be advocating, like, to make sure that this information is in your, is part of your curriculum, or getting professors or getting people, guest speakers and guest professors like Dr. Al-Deen and other students like Sherelle to speak and share these histories, so that we're not speaking or working or operating from a position of ignorance. Because I'm gonna tell you, the burden is going to be higher on Generation Z, because now you have access to more information than a lot of the generations before. So it's not going to be an excuse for why this MSA is not integrated, or these group of students are, you know, or this group doesn't know much about this group, right? We all have we have much more access, so we got much more accountability. But I love this this conversation and this platform that was provided. So good for you.
Awesome. I think we're over time a little bit, so we can start wrapping up now. If you have any last words.
Sherelle?
Oh, I just want to say thank you for the opportunity.
Any other questions that, like any questions that you, or well, I won't say questions, but is there one thing that you would like to know or benefit from the older people on the panel, including myself? Anything that you would?
Are you talking to me or?
I was talking to Sherelle, but I can Sufyan same.
Oh.
No, Sherelle can go ahead.
Okay. I would just say more about what happened like back in the old days. Well, let me not say that. Like more about our history.
Uh-huh. Yeah.
So that would be my only question, like more about my history, more, you know, when I wasn't alive, things that I wasn't allowed to know.
Yeah. And I think that's a really good point. That reminds me of, yeah, that's something that, you know, we got to work on for sure, is just making sure that
there is a floating bibliography of African American Islam. I forgot who put it together. It's enormous.
That would be great if we could get that information, and if we could put it in the chat, or you know, if we could put it in the chat, or if we get it later and make sure that Sufyan gets it out to the student body, right, through the emails, and then
For sure.
Somebody said Kayla Wheeler put it together.
Yes. That's the name.
Okay.
It's really
So African American Muslim Bibliography by Kayla Wheeler. Kayla Wheeler,
yeah.
Wonderful. Okay. Dr. Al-Deen, do you have any parting wisdoms to share?
No, but I'm taking some wisdoms from all of you. It's been a blast. You all energized me, and I really, really appreciate it. May Allah bless you for that.
I mean,
yes, it was beautiful. I would definitely say we have to do more of these.
I like it. Thank you all so much. Yeah, let's just all continue to move the needle forward, as we say, and just continue to connect and educate ourselves and each other, inshallah.
Inshallah. Thank you everyone for coming out. I think this is really productive, and I'm glad that we were able to do.
Oh, I was just gonna say somebody had asked the question for Dr. Al-Deen.
Oh, sure. Yeah, I just saw that.
Okay.
If Dr. Al-Deen has time. If not, that's fine.
What?
It says you are both involved in streets and activism. Could you speak on the influence of both movements to the transformation of the Blackstone Rangers to the El Rukns in Chicago?
That's a long conversation. I think that folk don't know how influential Islam is, but that's such a long conversation. We probably can't have it here, but Sufyan is going to bring our wonderful group, which is going to expand as we move through the year, looking at groups on the ground and wonderful Chicago and its environs and different ethnic groups, and we will make sure that that comes up again. Thank you, whoever did that.
All right. I think we have covered everything. I think this was an amazing event. This went a lot better. This surpassed my expectations. So thank you all for coming out. Special thanks to all the speakers for coming out. I definitely would like to do this again sometime if possible, because it looks like a lot of our viewers would like to continue the conversation. So
let's go ahead and close out with dua or something.
Oh yeah, sure. All right. Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Alhamdulillahi Rabbil Alameen. Ar-Rahman Ar-Rahim. Maliki Yawmiddin. Iyyaka na'budu wa iyyaka nasta'in. Ihdina as-siratal mustaqim. Siratal ladhina an'amta 'alayhim ghayril maghdubi 'alayhim waladdallin. Ya Allah, please help us on our journeys throughout our lives and help us make the Muslim community one ummah again. All right. Thank you everyone for coming out.
Thank you.
Thank you, students, even though y'all were like really quiet.
Uh-huh. Assalamu alaikum.
Wa alaikum salam.
Like,
Now all of you guys have all these